what I do doesn't seem like work to me. When I was a teacher just teaching in the classroom, that was never work. I often look at myself in the mirror thinking, oh my God, I get paid for this? But my why is about how many people can I not inspire, but how many people can I motivate to be a change maker too? I've never been to the doctors and had a prescription handed to me and me say to the doctor, are you sure this is right? Are you sure you're prescribing me with the right medication? Are you sure I should take 2 a day? I trust him. He's a professional. He's a doctor. Now, a teacher is also a professional. However, we tend not to trust our teachers. And what's getting me up in the morning is gathering a group of like-minded educators who are not in this for the money, because this isn't about money, it's about making a difference, who are willing to give a small section of their time to educate the masses. A good teacher knows how to teach, but a great teacher knows when not to.
Hello and welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast, the podcast that brings you the latest in the world of tutoring, edtech and education, and, hopefully, inspires in you the big change that each and every one of us is capable of. Qualified Tutor is an industry-leading tutor training organisation and online tutoring community for hundreds of tutors around the world. This podcast is the voice of this community, where we aim to hear from tutors, teachers, entrepreneurs, coaches, business experts, students, and more from the world of tutoring about what inspires them every day, how they can help tutors like you, and what they've learned about tutoring along the way. The question is, what will you learn today? Hi, my name is Lulo Miller, host of the Qualified Tutor podcast. Now, today's guest is a change maker that has inspired more than most. So much so, in fact, that he's featured as a TEDxSydney speaker, as one of the top 10 most influential global educators, and even as Australian of the Year in 2018. Now, that man is Gavin McCormack, and we are honoured to invite Gavin onto our podcast. Now, I could spend the next 10 minutes introducing Gavin, his lifetime achievements, his lockdown activities that inspired thousands of children across the world, his background in Montessori education, his TEDx-inspired vision for how education can rescue the earth, the children's picture books he's written and designed, the training he's delivered to hundreds of teachers worldwide, the 3 schools he's funded and built in Nepal, or even his almost unparalleled reach on the world of education LinkedIn. But you don't want to hear that from me. So all I'll say is thank you for joining us, Gavin, and welcome to the Qualified Tutor podcast.
Wow, that's an amazing introduction. I feel I'm blushing as I listen to you say those things. It's an honor to be here. I'm really feeling so good. So yeah, I'm looking forward to today's chat.
Very good. Yeah. So as we were just joking about earlier, and as you may have guessed from that introduction, Gavin is based in Sydney, in northern Sydney, and I myself am based in northeast London. So there's often not easy to find a time that works for both, but so it's currently kind of 7 a.m. for Gavin and just reaching 10:30 at night for me. But I think we are lucky to have Gavin's early morning spirit on this podcast. So, Gavin, we're gonna start with this question: What is your why as an educator?
Okay, so that's a big question, and one that I put to my students a lot because being the principal of primary school, I often ask them why. I tell the students in my school, anything is on the table. As a Montessori school, anything is on the table. If you want to do, you want to open a charity, you want to build a business, you want to sell a product, and all my students are primary school students. I say, yes, you can. You can do all those things as long as you tell me why. And your why has to be absolutely pure in terms of it has to help one other person at least, become better or progress in their life or find some more success. And for me personally, in terms of my why, That is exactly it. When I took the role of principal, I knew that it was going to be stressful. I knew it was going to be busy. I wasn't going to be able to, have all the freedoms that I used to have in terms of going to the beach after school or, finishing school at 3:00. But my why is about how many people can I not inspire, but how many people can I motivate to be a change maker too? Because I think that the more people we get on the treadmill of change, using their influence to make real impact with purpose, then, it's not hard. Exponential growth in terms of feeling good and making a difference means that you're only, 5 or 6 steps away from changing the world yourself. So I just think my why personally is about exactly that. I grew up in Leeds. My mum was a single mum. We didn't have much as children. And my aim wasn't to go out there in the world and make money. In fact, I don't have much money at all. I've given it all away. My aim was to have the most fun, but make the biggest difference. And right now, I'm in a real sweet spot. It feels like I'm actually achieving that myself. So that's my why, ultimately.
Wow. I'm sure if you weren't constrained by the fact that this is a half an hour question with a few more questions to add in, then we could have a whole conversation, Gavin, just on that why. I feel like that's fundamental to what you are and to who you are and to what you do. And perhaps that can lead into the question I wanted to ask next, which was, and please be as open and as kind of visionary about this as you like. But what is it that you are most excited about at the moment in your life, in your work? What is it that's really getting you up in the morning and getting you out of bed?
Okay, so that's a really good question, and I haven't told anyone this, so this will be great. Obviously, I'm the kind of person who has 10 or 15 things going all at the same time, and it sounds stressful, but to me it's not, because what I do doesn't seem like work to me. When I was a teacher, just teaching in the classroom, that was never work. I often look at myself in the mirror thinking, oh my God, I get paid for this? I get paid to go to class every day and inspire a group of children and then say, look what you can do, look what you can achieve, and watch them just run with it. And I thought, God, I get paid for that. And, Australian teachers get paid good money. I think we're one of the highest paid teachers in the world. So it was crazy to think that. And then I thought, I've got all this time. Like, I'm finishing work at 3:00 every day as a teacher. That gives me another, 7 or 8 hours of the day to do something else. And then came along technology, and the world suddenly seemed so close. Everything. I'd been around the world, I'd been traveling and been backpacking for a few years when I was younger, and everything's so distant. And suddenly, I was given this device, like, here's an iPhone, and everything is in your pocket, the whole world. You can actually talk to anyone you want in the world as long as you make a connection with them. And then I started to think, well, now I've got this kind of energy within me that I feel that I want to make this big change, this big difference. How can I leverage that? So I first started writing books. And I thought, if I write some picture books, then people will buy them, they'll be in classrooms, and I can sell them online, and I can have a little narrative within those stories and make a difference in that way. And I did that. I've written 4 or 5 books, and they're beautiful, and I'm happy, but, it wasn't big enough. It was big, but it wasn't big enough. And then I started to gather this following online, and a lot of teachers and parents and school principals, leaders and whatnot. And I realized that they felt the same way. They all were teachers. They all wanted to make a difference with their little class of 20 or 30 children, which is beautiful, and we've all been there. But, there's a lot of power within every teacher to make a difference. If only they had 50,000 students to teach every day, and it was a possibility. And then I started to realize that it is a possibility in actual fact. And I've done a lot of work in the Himalaya. So I've built, 7 or 8 schools in the Himalaya and a couple of big training centers, the 2 biggest training centers in Nepal, actually. And what I realized there was everyone has a school to go to, but the school system is so shocking. Go to northern India, go to Ladakh, go to Nepal or Bangladesh. What you'll find is dusty rooms where the children sit on the floor. There's a teacher at the front, and there's a board and some chalk. But the quality of education is so low, and it's no one's fault. It's just the position that country's in at the moment. And what gets me up in the morning at the moment is this. is that I've recently resigned from my job as school principal, and that was a big decision. But I resigned not because I don't like the job. I love the job, and I love the children. I love the teachers. In fact, all the teachers are my friends. The reason I resigned is I've realized during this pandemic, with the capabilities of the internet and the networks that we have in terms of technology, that there is a chance to educate the masses via your bedroom or via your office with a couple of screens, 3 cameras, and an iPad. And I've been trialing that recently. And next year, I'll be embarking on a journey with a good friend of mine from Melbourne. He's called Richard Mills, and we are going to attempt to open something called Upschool. And Upschool will be basically an anywhere school for those who can't attend. So if you're in Ladakh, and Ladakh has, hundreds of millions of people live there with millions of children who can't go to school and haven't been at school for 2 or 3 years. Well, they have the fastest internet. They have faster internet than probably you or I. They have 5G running out of northern India. So they've got the internet, but no school. So why don't we just take the school to them? So the idea, and what's getting me up in the morning, is gathering a group of like-minded educators who are not in this for the money, because this isn't about money, it's about making a difference, who are willing to give a small section of their time to educate the masses. And so we'll make a timetable. Teachers from around the world will log in, and it'll be Barbara from Massachusetts at 3 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. Hi, guys, welcome to Phonics with me, Barbara. She will deliver this absolutely killer lesson. Children from all over the world who can't go to school, or even can go to school but want to go to the Anywhere School, check in, are educated. Barbara logs out, and then logs John from Egypt, who's going to teach. And so, when you've got a group of teachers who are willing to give their time, are empowered, motivated, want to make a difference, then I think, and I really believe this, otherwise I won't have quit my amazing job, I think that you can educate the children who can't get to school from the comfort of your own bedroom. So That is getting me going at the moment. And I'm running something called Empathy Week in September 20th to 24th, where I put it out online very quickly, just a little poster. And I said, hey, guys, if you're a teacher in the world and you want to give 1 hour of your time during this week, please register here. And I've had 3,500 teachers of willing to give 1 hour of their time in that week. So look, there's a movement out there. People want to make a difference, and they just need a platform to be able to do it. So hopefully next year these will come to fruition and become a reality, and it will be very exciting.
Okay, so yes, World Empathy Week. I wanted to speak a little bit more about that, and hopefully we'll chat a little bit more about World Empathy Week at the end of this. But yes, for those of you listening, the form to sign up, if you are a teacher and you are willing to give an hour of your week in September to change the world just a little bit, to help children around the world, then the form for that will be in the show notes below. But my question to you, Gavin, is, can we get Barbara on the podcast, or was she a made-up teacher?
Barbara is actually my old secretary, lovely lady, not even a teacher. I just use that word because I don't know why I use that word, that name. I use it all the time. It's just my fictional character that just pops into my head.
Barbara and John. Remembered.
Barbara, yeah. Whenever I'm talking about a made-up teacher to the students or in some kind of lecture, I always use Mr. Johnson. So if there is a Mr. Johnson out there, I'm so sorry. You're probably a really good teacher, but I always use you as the terrible teacher who just lectures the kids all day. So my apologies if you are Mr. Johnson.
Sorry, Mr. Johnson. Okay, and there's a key point there, and as listeners who haven't heard of you before, haven't seen you on LinkedIn or elsewhere before, Gavin, will already have understood you are an educator who seeks to make positive change in the world. And if you have heard of Gavin before and you're drawn to this podcast because of that, well, first of all, thank you, Gavin. But second of all, you'll know what Gavin is about. And really, I see there's a point here. There's short of an issue, but there's a point here, and that is that if we want educators to inspire change, how can they do this when consistency in education is key for children? How do we inspire change when consistency is key? Okay,
that's a killer question. That's an awesome question. I was doing a keynote speech last night in Turkey, in Ankara, and there were 80,000 teachers logged into this forum. I don't know how they ran it, but it was unreal. And then someone asked me a very similar question, and their question was, how do we be creative teachers when the government are so restrictive and tell us exactly what to say and what to do? And that's a really common issue, because what happens in most of the schools and in the government organizations in the world is that the government want to show that their education system and their country is la creme de la creme. So they want it to rank on the PISA scale up nice and high, up in the 1 and the 2 and the Singapore and the Norway and the Finland. And when that comes from the top, it filters it all its way down from the hierarchy of the government, and it ends up at the desk of the child sitting there. And the way I see that is that, the government say we want to improve our education system, and the way we're going to measure that is we're going to get higher on the PISA rankings, which is the World Educational Rankings. And therefore they push that to their delegates, and their delegates push that out to their local principals, and their local principals hand the curriculum to their teachers that says, look, if you teach this, then at the end of this journey, if you do a really good job, then your kids will all get grade A's. And then I feed that grade A back up the ladder again to the top. We report that to the world body, and then we do really well. So off you go. Let's make that happen. And that's an absolute failure in my eyes in terms of your question, because you said, how do we inspire this innovation and this creativity and this future style of learning? Children who will grow up to be leaders who will basically do the right thing. How do we do that? And I think I actually have the answer to that. And the answer lies within A, our leadership within our schools, and B, our teachers. But it starts with the leadership, and the leadership have to do one thing right, and that one thing is to trust their teachers that they can teach. In no other profession in the world, you don't go to the doctors. I've never been to the doctors and had a prescription handed to me, and me say to the doctor, are you sure this is right? Are you sure you're prescribing me with the right medication? Are you sure I should take 2 a day? I trust him. He's a professional. He's a doctor. Now, a teacher is also a professional. However, we tend not to trust our teachers. Nobody in society. Parents tell them how to teach. Parents tell them, what they're doing wrong. Their leadership teams tell them exactly what to say by handing them documents and saying, say this, teach that, assess that. But each teacher is unique. Each teacher is an individual. Each teacher has their own style and also wants to be motivated themselves. They also come to school with a plethora of skills and interests. You might have a chef, who is a part-time chef, but he comes to school as a teacher. Are you utilizing his knowledge of food in the classroom? You might have a marine biologist who goes diving on a Saturday. Are you allowing her to shine and bring her skills into school? And when we do that, when we trust our teachers, when we give them freedom to be able to experiment with the curriculum, and when I say experiment, I don't mean miss out the outcomes and the indicators and not meet their targets. I don't mean that. What I do mean is meet those targets and meet those outcomes, but meet them in a way that suits them. If the curriculum says you will teach children about volcanoes and how they erupt, which is on probably every curriculum in the world, why don't you just let your teachers teach that in a way that suits them? Because each and every one of them will come to the party slightly differently. Each and every one of them will teach it in a different way. But when you do that, they do it with motivation and they do it with inspiration, and therefore your children walk away inspired too. But the second point I want to make is the typical lesson plan that we all follow, which is, the teacher introduces a lesson, the teacher stands at the front, the teacher shows the whiteboard, the children open a textbook, they highlight the keywords, they do a bit of reading. If you remember everything I said on Friday, you get a grade A. That should be thrown out the window. That is, 200-year-old style of teaching, and it doesn't inspire any creativity, any innovation, or any independence in our students. What should actually happen is the teacher should only be really teaching for about 20 minutes, and that should be really inspirational, really personal, and really tangible. Something about, if you're teaching volcanoes, well, here's a picture of me when I actually went to Bali. I was standing on a volcano. The lava was really hot, and your children are like, oh my God, my teacher went to a volcano. It's unbelievable. And then comes the most important bit in my eyes, and that's when the teacher says, now, students, what would you like to know about volcanoes? And every hand goes up, and basically the children write their own curriculum. They say, how hot is lava? What's the biggest volcano? What will happen if the volcano in Yosemite goes off? And the teacher writes those down, doesn't answer them, but writes them down, and then says, you can research one of these questions or all of these questions. You can work with whom you want in the class. You can represent your research in a way that suits you. It can be a diagram, a model, a show, a play, a dance, a report, an artist. And what happens at that very moment when you do that and you let go and you say yes to your students is they go away and they show you how inspired they can be, but they also show you skills you never get to see if you have them all sitting in rows and listening to you. Because they start to collaborate, they start to communicate, they start to innovate. They'll make mistakes and they will go wrong, but from mistakes comes great avenues of learning. We all know that. And I think that is the change we need to make from the top down and from the bottom up. Is we need to have trust. We need to have freedom within limits, and we need to let go. We need to say to our students, yes, you can. There's a really good quote that I'll finish your question with, which is, a good teacher knows how to teach, but a great teacher knows when not to. And I love that quote because it allows you to step back and just let it all play out in front of you.
A good teacher knows how to teach, but a great teacher knows when not to. That has to be repeated. I think that has to be remembered. I think that has to be recalled at certain times for those teachers amongst us. And that obviously includes tutors as well, because tutors do teach amongst other things. So what a vision. That's obviously the situation within certain classrooms. Certainly I would imagine the ones that Gavin McCormack oversees, or at least conducts. But I want to go further into that point, Gavin, because that's only, I imagine, the very early stages of the plans that you hope to inspire, but also implement in classrooms around the world in the future. And this is really a question in which you can let your imagination run wild, Gavin. And that question would be, what would success for classroom education look like in 2030?
Okay, so good question. And I think a really good point to make is 2030 is 10 years away. Can I extend your question to 2032?
You may have heard in the hesitancy of that date. I was going to go 2050, but let's go 2032.
Yeah, the reason I say 2032 is this, that if you are a kindergarten child today in the US, you'll graduate from school in 2032, right? So, that's 12 years away. Now, let me put that in perspective for you, because, we have no idea what the world will look like in 12 years at all. You might think you do, but let me put it in perspective. In 2008, so 12 years ago, there was no Google Maps. iPhone had just been released, and there wasn't an electric car on the road. Now, so if you think about what's happened in 12 years in the world, there was no Google Maps. That's crazy. Now we've got Google Earth. Now we have satellites in the sky that can track you everywhere you go. And the reason I say that to you is because in 2032, we have no idea what kind of skill, what kind of knowledge our children will need, or if they will even need knowledge at all. We have no idea. Maybe this is something we can download. We've got scientists talking about implanting things and all these crazy, these crazy whimsical things that people talk about. They often come to fruition. I mean, you've got Elon Musk talking about going to Mars, and you think, oh, no, it's never going to happen. But there'll be a day when there's some people standing on Mars. I can guarantee that. And in 2032, we do not know what academics our children will need. We don't. But we do know one thing is really important. We know exactly what skills they will need. They will need empathy, love, understanding, compassion, resilience, time management, determination, persistence. They'll need all of those. There's no question about that. They'll always have a place in our society, and they always have had a place, especially now, because the world's in a pickle. The world's upside down. We've got global warming happening. Sea levels are rising. The oceans are becoming polluted. We've got poverty. We've got the far right growing. We've got racism, sexism, the Me Too movement. We've got everything happening right now. And the reason we've got that happening now is because 12 years ago, 20 years ago, we focused on academics. We only cared about getting grades. And we didn't prepare our students, who are now the leaders of today. We didn't prepare them to be empathetic. We didn't prepare them to be understanding or caring. And the reason I say that is because, you have organizations, companies now that go into countries where the people are poor, they're impoverished, they're desperate. And we say to them, hey, we'll build you a bridge. Would you like a bridge to cross that river? And the people say, oh my God, I'd love a bridge. I hate swimming across rivers to get to a Don't worry, we'll build you a bridge. As long as you give me that bit of land over there, you've got some rocks that I need. And the people say, okay, no problem. We'll give you the land, build us the bridge. And then we're building the bridge. We take the land, we mine the land, we pollute their waterways, we kill their animals, we kill their plants, and we ruin their biodiversity and ultimately drive them out of their home. And we do that without a care because we want money. We want that dollar value in our bank account. And never is that delivered with empathy. We don't do that. When Jeff Bezos went to space last week and he spent his $1 trillion, whatever it was, why didn't he just get all that money and say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build 1,000 schools in the northern India with that money. And I'm going to change the lives of, hundreds and hundreds of children. And I'm not picking on Jeff Bezos. I'm just using him as an example. We don't have leaders with empathy. We don't have leaders with compassion. And we don't have leaders who have perspective when it comes to understanding what other people are going through. We often say to our students, imagine that why don't we ask our leaders to imagine that they're, living in an impoverished society or in an area where, they don't have everything. And when you ask me, what do I see education looking like in 2030 or 2032? I see that there should be a very big emphasis and a strong emphasis for our schools to focus, or at least allow an avenue for skills to be not taught, but experienced in our classrooms, so that our children get a chance to get perspective, so our students get a chance to understand and reach out and make a difference in the world. One of the big things that we do at my school is everything has to have a reason. It has to have an impact. So when students come to my office and knock on the door and they say, Gavin, we want to have a bake sale, I say, you can have that bake sale, but you tell me why. And if their why is not good enough, then we don't have the bake sale. But if their why is big, if they say, I want to have a bake sale, and this actually is a true story. 4 girls came to my office. They are 10 years old. This is their exact words. I want to have a bake sale on Friday. You can. Tell me why. And they said, we've been studying Burma, and there's a lot of Burmese refugees coming to Australia. We want to raise $500 on a bake sale, buy some backpacks. We want to give the backpacks to our parents at school, ask them to fill them up with things for children like teddies and books and shoes and anything else that children might like. And we want to give them to Burmese children as they arrive here in Australia to help them with their first day at school. So I said, of course I said, yes, you can definitely have that bake sale. And those girls, 10 years old, for 9 weeks, they handed 140 backpacks with no help from me to 140 refugees who just arrived. And when I saw the video of the children getting their backpacks as they arrived from the boat, or the boat that came into Sydney Harbour, when I saw them, when I showed the video to the students, 2 of them cried, they're only 10, and all 4 of them said, we want to do this again. And to me, that is what education needs to look like in 2032. It needs to be around, building resilient, empathetic, understanding leaders of tomorrow who will right the wrongs that we have created today, unfortunately. So I hope that answers the question in a big grandiose way. But I think that we can do that. I don't think that's too hard. It just involves a little shift, a mind shift in the way that we see education as a whole. And I think that we're not too far away from that.
We're not. We're 12 years from that, hopefully. That's an amazing story. That really is. I hope that is able to inspire any listeners we have here who are teachers or who are involved in the classroom to consider equivalent projects or to consider similar projects, especially with.
Well, I think. Sorry.
Go on.
Can I just jump in? I'm sorry to interrupt you. I just wanted to say that the whole idea of inspiration and inspiring students is not about the teacher scaffolding and saying, here, you can do this. Here you go. Go and get some backpacks and, do that. That in that situation, that wasn't my idea. That was their idea. The idea was that you scaffold this kind of conversation between your students to say, this is what change looks like. You can do it. If you only give 1 backpack to 1 child, that's good enough. That's totally good enough. Even if it's a book, that's totally fine. But the whole point of change is that you start and somewhere, but you start. Like, you just start, because things get out of control very quickly. When I first started building schools in the Himalayas, I didn't start with schools. I started with helping a guy redesign his training center. I went there and I painted it for him. While I was there, I thought, well, I'll do a bit of training while I'm in. I trained a few women who were in his training center. And he said, will you come back again? I said, I'd love to come back again because I felt good. I felt good about doing that. I walked away feeling on a high. And I came back and I thought, well, maybe we'll open our own training center. Let's do that. So we built the training center. Anyway, that feeling of feeling good about doing good, your students also have that. And there's no better feeling than helping somebody else. And when they feel that feeling, then all they want is more. And so the best thing that any teacher listening to this podcast or any educator out there who wants to start this journey is just to start. It doesn't matter how small it is. You don't have to go big. It doesn't have to be 140 backpacks. It can be one backpack. It can be one book. It can be a poster that you stick up in the town hall that inspires people to think about cleaning the waterways or whatever it is. But you just start somewhere. And once you get started, there's no stopping you once you get going. So I think that's a really important message to have for most of our listeners today.
I don't see why we shouldn't end there, Gavin. That's been such a powerful message, and we don't want to muddy that with any closing comments. That was a brilliant message to end on, Gavin. And if you are listening and you enjoyed this episode or you enjoyed more of what Gavin does, you can find all of the links to his work and his projects in Nepal in the show notes below. Please recommend this podcast, this episode to others. It is the strongest way to spread the good word and to inspire changes by word of mouth. So let someone know, let a family member, a colleague, a student know about this podcast, and follow Gavin if you can, because there's a whole load to come. Gavin, we're going to let you go. You have school. You have a whole school day. You have a Tuesday morning to be getting on with. So we will say goodbye there. And thank you so much once again.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a wonderful start to my morning. I feel inspired by listening to you too. And I hope your listeners have had a wonderful time. So thanks for inviting me. It's been an honor.
You're amazing. Thank you, Gavin. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Qualified Tutor Podcast. Whether you're a regular listener of this podcast or you've just stumbled across it, join the Qualified Tutor podcast group within the Qualified Tutor community to stay up to date with our latest news, offers, workshops, and of course, simply to meet other tutors like you. Whatever your level as a tutor, our training courses will be the next step in your professional development. Visit qualifiedtutor.org/training to find out more about our CPD accredited and Ofqual recognised courses, the first of their kind in the tutoring industry. Your student deserves the best tutor possible. Make that happen today by joining Qualified Tutor